their time with those glasses. Well, quite frankly, I would say I'm always smart. I'm just joking. But honestly, yeah. Because last time when I started reading without my glasses, I just couldn't, like, I was like, my eyes were straining. So this time I'm prepared. Be prepared. So, yes, Smart Time with Aster. Welcome in. Hello. Hello, fellow Warcraft enthusiasts, aka Bald and Cookie. Thank you for sitting down so nicely. Bald says a fire mage is gonna be crazy OP for raiding, in my opinion. Why is that? Why just for raiding? Why not for PvP? Are people still gonna play Frost for PvP? So, Chapter 2. Lord Salthariel sat, eyes wide, perfect physique, nearly motionless, as Larath performed. Music to dance to, music to move the spirit, music to make the heart ache. Salthariel listened with a focus even Sylvanas could grudgingly admire. The entire Windrunner family had a deep appreciation for art. Their parents had instilled in them for a young age that a world without beauty was no world without living in. Music, sculpture, poetry, and the tranquility and inspiration they brought was what Larissa and their Farstriders fought to protect. What their father defended at court, Sylvanas thought magic was useful, yes, but no display Grandmaster Bolivier had conjured could rival the simpler magic of artistic creation. And so the girls danced and sang as other children did, but Sylvanas' little lord's son, not so little, not anymore, was true prodigy, and everyone had played for was the better for hearing him. Word of Larath's uncanny gift for music and song had reached beyond Windrunner Village and neighboring areas, all the way to the ears of the elegant, polished, impeccably tailored Lord Salthariel. He was famous, or perhaps infamous, for his extravagant parties. He'd been skeptical as to whether the youth really was as good as rumor had it, and Salthariel had mentioned the boy to Larath. Larath's father had invited the Lord to come see for himself, and it was clear within moments that he, like all who heard Larath perform, was captivated. And Bald says more than likely Frost initially has more control over players, but Fire is very RNG crit based. But I was testing it out and launching huge damage pyroblasts that also dot over long fights could be even better. Oh dang, I could see that, especially for like team fights and stuff, for sure. I'm gonna sit crisscross. Don't mind me getting into reading position with my blanket. Yes, this is how I play. Okay. Sylvanas was proud of who Larath was growing up to be, but she was a bit sad to see the child yielding way to the adult. She leaned up against the doorway, smiling wistfully as she watched him perform, as she had done at least 1,000 times. And as 1,000 times before, Larath astonished her. Sylvanas had been the first to remark that, even before the baby could speak, Larath was singing himself to sleep. "He is just making noises," Larissa had said. The three of you did the same thing. "No, there's a melody," Sylvanas insisted, and there had been. As Larath grew, Windrunner's Spire was often filled with his singing, and when he was introduced to instruments, he picked them up easily. A true Windrunner, he was driven to excel, practicing diligently. Once Sylvanas had noticed his lute strings were red. Larath had played until his fingertips bled, but said not a word. Under Lord Saltharel's rapt gaze, Larath played the lute and the lyre, the pipes and the flute, the mandolin and the harp, all with equal skill and equal power to touch the spirit. Then he placed the harp to the side and stood quietly for a moment. He raised his head and used Sylvanas' favorite instrument, his voice. By the light of the sun, children of the blood, our enemies are breaking through. Children of the blood, by the light, failing children of the blood, they are breaking through. O children of the blood, by the light of the sun, failing children of the blood, they are breaking through. O children of the blood, by the light of the sun. That's the song. I'm not going to sing the song. Okay. Lament of the highborn, because I feel like if I sing it would sound more eerie than anything. Lament of the highborn, more than 10,000 years old, was revised after the Troll Wars and the breaking of the Amani Empire some 3 millennia ago. The Qualdore had joined with the humans of Arthur and owed them much. The event was honored kingdom-wide with a ceremony and celebration every year. But rather than being a rousing song of triumph, the song focused on the tremendous loss of life that had been necessary to earn that victory. So that's why in that song, they talk a lot about the light of the blood of the light, blah, blah, because of the fact that they don't necessarily want it to be like this victorious thing necessarily, but also to take recognition in the people who had passed away for that victory to have happened. Sylvanas both loved and hated it with Larath's performance, the piece solo. When the Windrunner children sang together, Sylvanas focused on the harmonies, holding emotions at bay. But when Larath alone gave voice to the ancient song, his pure tenor soaring and then softening, it was as if he sang of a grief that had only just happened, of pain so fresh it still bled, and it always broke her, just a little bit. Scowling at herself, Sylvanas palmed the tears from her eyes, looking up just in time to see the great Lord Saltharel, he of the jaded palate and cynical drawl, tucking away his handkerchief. He composed his handsome features as he rose to his feet, applauding. "Well done, young fellow, well done indeed." To Varath, he said, "I confess, I was doubtful. The praise being heaped upon the boy's fair head was accurate. Usually musicians of his caliber are much older and found only in Silvermoon. But I must say, Varath, your family does seem to have an inordinate number of talents and skills. You, of course, the Ranger General Ilaria, and now young Larath." Sylvanas and Varisa exchanged annoyance glances. They might as well not have existed. Then again, Sylvanas had no need for or indeed nor interest in Salthariel's favor. "I would be delighted to host a salon at my little country haven as his debut," the noble was saying. "A few select distinguished individuals, small and private, tasteful." He paused, then added, with a glance at Varisa and Sylvanas, "Of course, the family is welcome to attend." He sounds like a treat. He sounds like a jerk, but it's okay. And Cookie says, good old Silvermoon. Exactly, good old Silvermoon. You know, I guess because it's the main city, it's kind of like the New York. You know, when you think of Broadway, when you think of performance, you think of New York, or you know, if you think of acting and studio production, you think of Los Angeles. So I think it's like that, whereas like Silvermoon is probably where like a lot of the talented people go to be discovered. So that's probably why like most of the time you wouldn't find them like in a small town, you know. or less likely. Cookie says, "Hello, I'm still naming all the new work servers after WoW City." Yay! I'm happy to hear that. That is a tradition that should continue. 3 years on. You know, Cookie, my Wi-Fi at home is named Azeroth. And I always get a chuckle when someone wants to use the Wi-Fi. They're like, "What's your Wi-Fi?" Azeroth. Join Azeroth. Come join me. And I wonder what my neighbors think. If anyone plays WoW, they're probably like, "Whose house is Azeroth around here?" Cookie says, "My home server is called Stormwind, but I'm running out of names for the servers at work at number 11,219. Holy moly. The only best option would be to just, start making up ones that you could start making. Like, you know how people have original characters? You can make an original character, but of, like, the names of like WoW places. Like, if you could name it, what would you name it and why? Like, if you have a character that you really love, you can start naming them after people. Cookie says, like, I got down to naming them after specific buildings in the cities, then I ran out. That's true. I could see that's definitely easy to do. I would say, well, it's not easy to do. What you're doing is, it takes a lot of work. But I'm saying, like, with how many servers that you have, 11,219, I can see that's quite a lot. That's quite a lot, Cookie. 3 days later, Sylvanas found herself wearing a simple dress that Salathiel's latest lady love, the heiress Elisara. That's a beautiful name, Elisara, Sunstriker. Now I wish maybe my next character will be named Elisara. Elisara Sunstriker had witheringly pronounced charmingly rustic, considering how many had complimented Sylvanas by the time Elisara gave her unsolicited opinion. Sylvanas allowed herself to enjoy the other women's jealousy. Now she leaned ideally against a tree at Salathiel's haven. As Larath performed for the select, distinguished individuals the Lord had mentioned. Normally, Sylvanas was happy to surrender to the enchantment Larath wove, but tonight she was observing the observers. It amused her how self-important they were, each one believing themselves unique, when in reality they were all exactly alike. Clad in sumptuous clothing, wearing arrogant expressions, making comments that were civil on the surface but sharp enough to wound, and yet Varath, common sense, kind, and Sylvanas had to admit, long-suffering, moved comfortably through the gathering. He stopped to congratulate one of the birth of a child, another on an award, still another for an evaluation to a higher station, and others for their stunning wardrobes. How does he do it? She wondered. Magisters had nothing on the kind of magic her father wielded. No wonder he had limitless patience with his lively brood. Things moved quickly after the event, and Larath was soon performing regularly at Salathiel's soirees. He became almost more of a draw than the parties themselves. 6 months following Larath's debut, he returned to Windrunner Spire from Salathiel's haven, looking both stunned and excited. "There's my Lady Moon," he called up to Sylvanas as she stood waving at him from one of the balconies. "And there's my little Lord Sun," she called back. Come down, I have something to tell you." Sylvanas hastened to meet him, a little worried at how flushed he was and how quickly he was breathing. "Are you well?" she asked. "I have never been better. Oh, Lady Moon, Salathiel wants me to perform before Prince Calathias." And And Cookie says, actually, I find easier than remembering them by number. Oh, dang. See, that's a good way to remember it. I like that. That's a good way to remember the servers. I feel like with me, especially if you have like an emotion attached to something, they say that you can remember something better when you have like an actual emotion attached. So maybe that's why. Now it was Sylvanas' turn to be shocked and delighted. Calathias, Sunstrider, spent most of his time in Dalaran. The Magus city. Only rarely did he venture home. She flung her arms around her baby brother, noticing for the first time that he was now as tall as she, feeling his frame slim as a willow as she hugged him, both of them laughing. You are far and away the best of us, you know, Sylvanas said, as she drew back and mused his hair. Larath flushed again. I don't think so at all. I'm honored and excited, but it's just music. Oh yes, oh my, it's just Prince Calathias, she said, feigning boredom. Even father has to make an appointment to meet with the prince when he is in Silvermoon, and now he's coming to see you perform. The blood abruptly drained from his face. Oh, he said. Oh? What is it? What's wrong? Sylvanas, what if I'm awful? You won't be. You will captivate him just like you do everyone else. But I have never... Mother and father will be there to cheer you on. He relaxed a little bit, but didn't look entirely reassured. Oh, good. Still, how can you be so sure I won't mess it up? Because, Sylvanas replied, do you think that Salathiel would have invited Calathias, who is hardly ever here, to a performance if he thought you would embarrass him? He laughed at that, and the tension bled out of him. I cannot argue with you. You always win anyway. Of course I do, little Lord's son. Always remember that. I like their relationship. I honestly didn't even know Sylvanas had a little brother. Isn't that odd? Like, I feel like they focus on the sisters' relationship a lot, and I don't feel like I've heard much about her brother before. Cookie says, does anyone remember the name of the ship that goes from Eastern Kingdoms to Kalimdor? Thinking about extra name options. Oh, that's a good one. I didn't even know the Zeppelins had names, or the ships. I just assumed that they were like the Zeppelin to Org, the Zeppelin to Thunderbluff, the Zeppelin to, to the and I'm forgetting it. Cookie says the conversation is interesting. It shows what Sylvanas was, right? I do like it. Shows that she was caring, and to a lot of degree, like, she wasn't envious either. Like, that's like her personality. She wasn't envious of her brother for being a prodigy. She wasn't envious of her sister for being the future leader. She in herself was happy with supporting her brother. And then now it's going on. What do you mean you're not going? Sylvanas' voice was sharp and angry. Larissa frowned at the tone. Your father and I must always put our duty before pleasure. Larath is younger than you, and he understands. Of course I do, Mother, Larath said. His voice was calm and pleasant as always, and he wore a smile. Sylvanas, though, knew him better than anyone, and she could see by the tense way he held himself that he was greatly disappointed. Varath had been summoned by an Asterian a few hours ago for urgent business, sending a courier shortly afterwards to let the family know that the king would likely have need of him well into the evening. Now, right before Larath was to leave for Lord Salathiel's haven, Halderon Brightwing had arrived to inform the Ranger General that there might be trouble brewing near Troll territory. Then let Ilaria go at least, Sylvanas said. She was already distressed that she and Verisa were deemed too young to attend unaccompanied. Can you believe that? They deemed them as being too young to attend their brother's performance. Someone from the family should be there. Ilaria is my heir, Larissa said with exaggerated patience. She will assume the mantle of Ranger General in my absence. She must remain here to rouse the rest of the Farstriders in case they are needed. Larissa spoke as if Ilaria was not even present. Even though all four of the children stood together at the base of Windrunner Spire, the eldest child had a neutral expression, her arms crossed in front of her chest, but her eyes were cold. Sylvanas shot a glare at Holderon Brightwing, who gave a small, helpless shrug. It wasn't fair. Usually Lord Theron stepped in for Larissa unless a threat was imminent, but he had already left for Salathrion's party. Larath was nervous. Despite his brave face, and a family member in the crowd would have comforted him. "My lady," Holderon said, "we should go." Of course. Larissa swung onto her dragonhawk. She looked back at Larath, and her expression softened. "I regret that the day has taken this turn. Your father and I both would be there otherwise." "I know," Larath said, but he didn't meet his mother's eyes. "Please be safe." "Always," Larissa said. Then she hesitated and added, "I know you will do us proud, my son." Her normally hard face melted into a genuine smile, and then her dragon hawk sprang into the air, and she was gone. Ilaria sighed. "Come on," she said to her siblings. Sylvanas and Larath remained where they stood, but Verisa, looking anxiously from Ilaria to the others, turned to accompany Ilaria back to the spire. Sylvanas was silent, watching after her mother until she disappeared from view. "I'm so sorry, little Lord's son," she said quietly. "It's all right. You know there will be other opportunities, yes?" There would be, but who knew when the next Calathias would even be in Qualthalus. It could be years. She turned to look at him. "You are certain to impress the prince. I have every faith that your next performance will be held with the whole royal court in attendance." "No, really, Lady Moon, it's all right. Our parents have more important things to do than sit and watch me play." Larath's voice was threaded with resigned pain, and Sylvanas felt her chest ache for disappointment. "No, they don't," she thought, illogically but stubbornly. "It is cruel of Mother to insist that Ilaria remain here," she said. "If there's trouble, a messenger could just as easily go to the haven and notify the Farstriders there." "You know that it's not the real reason," Larath replied, and Sylvanas did. Ilaria and her mother had been quarreling recently about Ilaria's training. Larissa had ordered this to remind Ilaria that the Ranger General was in charge, and Ilaria must always obey. This was the third time Larissa had ordered her daughter to remain behind, just in case. So it's almost like they both know it's more of a punishment than her actually having to be there. Because Sylvanas was smart before she met the jailer. I think so too. I think she definitely was swayed by him to some degree, but at the same time, she wasn't really in the right mindset. She wasn't really herself. Like in this, in this part of the story, it's kind of like we know that she's in her mind. This is her, like her more authentic self was like how she was raised and like how she was growing up. But as she became older, she became a lot colder. And then also after becoming part of the Forsaken, she kind of lost herself and like what actually, or like her like what made her the person she is. She's almost like a hard shell. I want to make sure I didn't accidentally skip a page. Okay, yeah, there we go, right there. Cookie says, honestly, I feel that she made a very bad choice, and Dragonflight tells us how bad that choice was. True. I'll be looking forward to the kind of reading. I mean, we know she made a bad choice. It's kind of sad because if anyone was gonna turn evil, you would think it'd be her older sister based on, like, usually how stories go. It's usually the one who never gets to have fun. It's usually the character who is constantly not getting to be themselves. And it's kind of like that's how her sister, mom, is making a constant point that she has a duty and she has to always be present. And when she's not present, she gets punished for it. So, and both of the siblings know this. So I'm sure that Ilaria knows it as well. It was cruel and petty, and it also hurt Larath, who hadn't deserved it. We love you and we couldn't be prouder of you, Sylvanas said. I do know that, truly, Sylvanas hugged him tightly, then let him go, watching him run lightly towards the stables and his saddled hawkstrider. Her heart hardened. This wasn't right. Little Lord's son deserved better than this. And an idea occurred to her, brash and dangerous, and she started to smile. All she needed to do now was convince Lady Sun. Uh-oh. What do you think is gonna happen? Sylvanas has another idea. Uh-oh. Cookie says, it'd be interesting to see if her time in the mall makes her move appreciative of Azeroth. I think it will. I think based on what I saw in the game story side of things, she genuinely looks very embarrassed. Like, I don't think she was in the right mindset when she was making those actions, but at the same time she wants to atone for it. Absolutely not, Ilaria snapped moments later. One of these days your intrigues are going to get you into some real trouble. Now you sound just like father. They don't even really hurt anyone. Ilaria raised an eyebrow. That was one time, and no one is going to die from sugaring their meal instead of salting it. Over the last few years, Sylvanas had entertained herself by sneaking into places she wasn't invited, and in a few instances, even laying harmless traps for the unworthy, claiming that she was practicing her hunting skills. Her father calmly pointed out that an enemy would not be defeated by having a bucket of icy water abruptly poured on them. It would certainly catch them off guard, Sylvanas had responded. Vrath had sighed. My darling girl, sometimes I fear the greatest threat to this nation is a clever, idle mind. Sylvanas smiled at the memory, then continued, Sister, you know as well as I do that you won't be summoned. You will stay here and shoot arrows with Farisa until Mother returns home, just like always. This is already comedic, because obviously Sylvanas was a prankster. She was one of those, like, she's bored, she's gonna get herself into trouble type of kids. And I feel like even though they're saying like, oh yeah, it's, you're just gonna be sitting here shooting arrows like always, I feel like usually that's like something bad is gonna happen. And so I'm worried now. Despite her practice stoicism, Ilaria winced. Now I'm the one being cruel, Sylvanas thought. She had a slight pang of regret, but the harsh words were necessary. I promise I won't get into trouble, she said. I never attend Salathiel's stupid parties. No one there will recognize me. She hoped Ilaria had forgotten that Lord Thamar would be in attendance. I'll slip in, watch him play for a little while, then slip back out and come straight home. Verisa, their sweet little peacemaker, stepped between her older sisters and slipped her hands into theirs. All Larath wants is someone in the audience who loves him, Verisa said earnestly. Wouldn't you want the same if you were performing in front of Prince Kialthus? Ilaria looked from her to Sylvanas and sighed. Yes, I would. Very well, Lady Moon, you win. I will keep your secret. Just don't be so... She floundered for words. So you. Sylvanas snorted with laughter. She knew exactly what her sister meant, and that troubled her not at all. I will be the perfect lady, I promise. Now you can help me get into one of Mother's dresses. None of the Windrunner women cared much for dresses. People often told the sisters they were beautiful, and Sylvanas enjoyed the compliments, but in the end, flattery didn't mean much to any of them. Hardened leather armor that thwarted enemies was better than gleaming satin gowns, and well-crafted balanced arrows were their accessories of choice. Even so, there were social functions they were required to attend from time to time, given the importance of their parents' roles. Larissa had robes that were more opulent than anything Sylvanas would usually consent to wear, and Sylvanas wrinkled her nose in displeasure as she and Ilaria struggled to fasten the inordinate number of buttons, hooks, and lacing. How does anyone wear these? She muttered, and why? Sylvana sounds so cute, especially as a kid. I mean, the fact that she's like kind of like, you know, edgy. She doesn't like dresses. She's likes to play pranks. She's a daddy's girl. Your feet are bigger than Mother's, Verisa observed. She sat on their parents' bed, observing the unusual sight and chewing on her lower lip. Yes, but Mother's taller, which means that the gown will hide my shoes, Sylvanas replied. Then the hem will get dirty. Sylvanas smiled. While the younger girl was obviously excited about the escapade, she was clearly also worried that they'd get caught. I'll clean it, Sylvanas reassured her. She was anxious to get going. Who knew but Father's council session might end early, or Larissa return with more troll ears as trophies. Illyria started to braid her hair, but Sylvanas was done. This is good enough, she announced, grabbing a hat, clapping it atop her head, and stepping in front of the mirror to examine their handiwork. She almost didn't recognize herself. Her hair was usually a mess, and she wore breeches and tunics that bore grass and other stains on them. The young woman in the mirror looked elegant and graceful, poised and sophisticated in the long green dress and the sweeping hat atop pale gold tresses. Sylvanas smiled and curtsied toward the reflection. It did the same. Her smile grew. Perfect. And that's chapter 2. So chapter 3, I guess, is the big escapade. So chapter 2, parents are not home and they've left it to the sister, and being that the sister can't necessarily go, they're gonna still try to sneak out and wear dresses and try to look older, I guess. They're trying to sneak out and look older so they can attend this event, apparently. So hopefully no one will question. Cookie says, I'd like to see Blizzard pushing the books a bit more. People might hate the story less if it makes sense. So true. I mean, the books really make you like the characters in a different way, because you understand kind of like what where they're coming from, and you kind of have a little bit more feeling for them. Hello, clothes.